Morning, everyone. My name is Kyle, and I'm your host for today. Right. So thank you for joining us on another episode of Sprout HR as Finance Expert by Sprout Associates. So I'd like to ask you a question. How are you? I'm sure this is a critical time for HR. And so we're here to give you practical advice to help lead your company. And by the way, we're live on Facebook, so please invite your friends to watch. So just to give you a brief introduction to who we are, Sprout is an HR technology company that helps your company take it to the next level in terms of taking care of your people. We provide systems and support for recruitment, timekeeping to payroll, and analytics, all in a cloud-based system to enable work from home for you. And now, we hope to be able to help lift up your team during this crisis. Okay, so let's proceed to the next slide, please. Now, next slide, please. Now, while we're waiting for everyone to tune in, I'd like to introduce to you the raffle mechanics. All right, so you can join our raffle, and here's how you can. You need to collect all 3 keywords and get a chance to win a 500 peso Lazada gift certificate. All right, so first you have to collect all 3 keywords that will be flashed on the screen throughout the seminar. Next, you have to follow Sprout's official Twitter page with handle Sprout_PH or the link below. And you can comment all the 3 keywords on the post pinned on our page. And we'll announce the lucky winner at the end of the session. We'll be sending the gift certificates through email after the session before 6 p.m. Right, so I hope you got that, and please join our raffle. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so we have our first raffle keyword. Our first raffle keyword is DOLE. So again, that is DOLE. I hope you took note of that. The first raffle keyword is DOLE. All right, next. Now, you can prepare your questions for the fireside chat session later and ask us anything on your mind with regards to matters concerning our topic for today, which is DOLE advisories for resuming work in the office. All right. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our first speaker. He has 12 years of human resources management experience at present. He practices the following fields of law: employment law, contract management, data privacy, administrative law, and family law, as an advisor and as an advocate. So let's all welcome Attorney Lester Ople. Attorney?
I can't. Hello, good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Attorney. Yes, we can hear you
Yeah.
now. All right.
The slides are going. Sige. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for those technical difficulties. I hope everyone is safe and sound. And of course, in the course of our GCQ, we are a few days away from the scheduled lifting of the GCQ. So for today's episode, we will be talking about the advisories for resuming work in the office. Okay, so let's talk about the post-quarantine workplace or the workplace adjustments in the new normal. As a refresher, March 8th, we had Proclamation number 922, which declared a state of public health emergency due to COVID-19. And a few days after, President Duterte placed Luzon on an on an ECQ, and we had several extensions. We had several policy directions that were promulgated and then revised and then revisited. And last April 30, the DTI and the DOLE promulgated the interim guidelines on workplace prevention and control of COVID-19. And last May 16, the DOLE promulgated the guidelines on employment preservation upon resumption of business operations. So if you would notice from the time that the president declared a public health emergency and the direction was quarantine, now we're slowly shifting into resumption of business operations. And I wish to harp on this fact. The government does not yet declare that did not yet declare that we are COVID free. Rather, the government has been declaring that we are now allowed to resume normal business operations on a gradual or staggered basis, and with the caveat or the reminder that we are still to observe all of the precautions or the guidelines that they have to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So this is the legal framework of the post-quarantine, post-ECQ workplace. No, we have the new normal. We have, of course, the labor laws, company policies and practices, and local government unit ordinances. So if you have particular, for example, liquor bans or curfews imposed in your respective local government units, whether it's a municipality, city, or province, you will have to implement and interpret all of these issuances in light of the COVID issuances which have been promulgated by the national government agencies. So particularly for today's episode, we talk about two guidelines, which is the DTI-DOLE interim guidelines on workplace prevention and control of COVID-19 and the DOLE guidelines on employment preservation. Just a reminder, of course, number one, labor laws remain fully operative. So regarding general labor standards as well as other compliances for labor law, all of these are pretty much in place. So for example, for tomorrow, it's a regular holiday. It's the Philippine Independence Day. And those who are covered by general labor standards are eligible to receive holiday pay. So all of these laws remain fully operative. Second, company policies remain in force unless modified or revoked. And then last, of course, you have the employment and service contracts also remain in force unless novated or modified explicitly by the parties. For example, your organization or your workplace has maintenance staff or security staff through an accredited agency, then your service contracts with them remain in place. Unless, of course, the parties have explicitly modified these by another subsequent agreement. Okay, let's talk about the themes to remember as we go through this presentation. The first one is that there are workplace adjustments. When we go back to our respective workplaces, it's not going back to normal pre-ECQ. It's going back to normal with a new paradigm, particularly that of safety and health. And second, we also have preservation of employment. The government has been very clear in the intent that employers are supposed to preserve the employment status even if diminished operating or earning capacity. Now, if you would notice, there are a lot of industries that are badly hit by this pandemic, particularly the tourism and the food and beverage sectors. No, but that doesn't mean that these workplaces are not allowed to close. The intent is to preserve employment as much as possible, even if it is at a diminished operating capacity. Okay. I'd like to acknowledge first the Office of Undersecretary Irineo Vismonte and his staff, Ton Melendres, for allowing me to use the DTI and DOLE interim guidelines slides from the DTI official collaterals. No? So thank you, Undersecretary Vismonte and Mr. Melendres of the DTI for allowing me to use your slides for today's session. So going back, what is the DTI and DOLE interim guidelines on workplace prevention and control of COVID? The first order of business is to increase physical and mental resistance, meaning if the first line of defense against COVID really is a healthy body. And how do we ensure doing that? First, of course, we promote the consumption of nutritious and well-cooked food. Emphasis on the well-cooked because we are aware that proper cooking reduces the chances or the probability of foodborne pathogens to be ingested. And this means for the time being, those who are big fans of Japanese food, especially the raw food, the sushi, sashimi, iwas muna tayo ng konti, konting taste lang. Or of course, you have to um, make sure that you are sourcing it from responsible and reputable suppliers. Second is to drink plenty of fluids and avoid alcoholic beverages. So if you would notice, a lot of the municipalities, the local government units have imposed liquor bans, and it is not, you know, it's a twofold objective. One is to prevent possible crimes that may be committed as a result of over ingestion of alcohol or intoxication. Second, it is to ensure or to promote healthier patterns of living for people who are indoors. And then, of course, proper sleep, proper exercise, and taking of food supplements or vitamins. The second order of business is to reduce the transmission of COVID-19 in the workplace. Of course, you can see this in all establishments now. Entry is now being refused for persons who are not wearing face masks. Second, you have the daily health symptoms questionnaire. So if you are in a workplace who has resumed operations, one new practice is that on a daily basis, people who are coming into the facility are required to submit a health symptoms questionnaire, which really is just a questionnaire asking, have you been in contact with a COVID positive patient? Have you been experiencing any symptoms of COVID-19? And have you traveled in the last 14 days? And then you are also required to submit the proper contact information whenever these health symptoms questionnaires are requested of you. And one possible area of questions here is that, isn't this an invasion of privacy rights? The National Privacy Commission has actually mentioned that in a public health emergency like COVID-19, the number one objective of government is to prevent the control of prevent and control the spread of COVID-19, and this information has to be kept on record, because this information is what will help contact tracing and other efforts to ensure that the workplace and stakeholders in the workplace are adequately protected. Another one is to have the temperature checked of every person entering the facility, and this is to prevent that people would have misdeclarations on their health symptoms questionnaires. So para walang takas, tinginan tayo ng temperature. And then, of course, the availability of alcohol or soap and water in high human traffic areas of the workplace, so as to ensure that there is personal hygiene observed in all areas of the workplace. Now let's talk about the third aspect of the DTI-DOLE interim guidelines, which is the reduction of the transmission of COVID-19. Of course, disinfection. There are high traffic areas like the doorways, the handles of the doors, the countertops. So frequent disinfection is required at least every 2 hours. Sanitization, of course, availability of soap and water, and of course alcohol or alcohol disinfectants in human traffic areas. Physical distancing. So ito po yung rason kung bakit in the midst of the GCQ, there are very few industries that are allowed to operate at 100%, because we are now required to observe physical distancing. And let's start using physical distancing rather than social distancing. With social distancing, there's a connotation that our socialization will be changed. But with physical distancing, the focus really is on physical distance, not on social distancing. If you would notice, even in the schools, in the learning industries, there is a lot of social efforts, particularly Zoom calls, Google Hangouts, all of these technological innovations are now making us closer even if we are physically distant. No? So let's call it physical distancing. And then no eating in communal spaces. So kung meron po tayong canteen or pantry, of course you observe the physical distancing, and bawal na po yung sabay-sabay na break. And then of course one thing that workplaces would have to ensure is that there should be an available provision for emergency conveyance. If somebody suddenly develops COVID-19 symptoms in the workplace, there has to be an isolation area, and there has to be provisions for the transportation of such personnel to the nearest emergency medical facility. And when we talk about an isolation area in the workplace, another requirement there is that the persons who will be handling, particularly the clinic or the health and safety committee, if there is no clinic or doctor in the workplace, there has to be available PPEs. So face mask, gloves, face shield, and if possible, the bunny suit style of PPE for those who will interact with the persons who are developing COVID-19 symptoms in the workplace. One more thing about the persons who suddenly develop COVID-19 symptoms in the workplace is that you have to have an accommodation for those persons who were present in the facility when such COVID case was discovered. You have to disinfect the workplace and only resume work after some time. And all of those persons who are in the workplace during the same time that a COVID case was detected in the workplace are required to undergo a 14-day self-quarantine with monitoring of health symptoms. The objective here is, again, to reduce transmission and, if necessary, facilitate contact tracing. So I can see some questions coming in. Let's go to your questions later. So again, we are on the DTI DOLE interim guidelines on workplace prevention and control of COVID-19. Okay, so just a snapshot of what the DTI DOLE interim guidelines contain. It covers workplaces in the private sector. There are 4 strategies towards workplace safety and health, which is the increase of physical and mental resilience of employees, reduction of transmission of COVID-19, minimization of contact rate, and reducing the risk of infection from COVID-19. The primary duty of employers is to provide the company policies, resources, and materials, and of course, dedicated personnel. Kung mapansin niyo po sa ating mga malls, there are actually personnel who are doing the physical distancing marshals, no? So these are people or personnel who remind patrons in the malls to observe the signages, particularly the single file in the escalator, the arrows on human traffic. So let us make sure that these personnel are adequately protected as well. And for the workers, simple lang yung duties natin as workers. It is to comply with workplace measures on prevention and control of COVID-19, as well as personal hygienic practices. And then you also have work accommodations. I did not include this in slides because this is the topic of a separate webinar episode available on sprout.ph/COVID. If you want to have a full webinar episode on the DTI DOLE interim guidelines, please visit our website, our COVID resources page. Mas ma-in-depth po yung ating discussion doon. And then there was also a discussion on COVID-19 testing. Meron tayong rapid, meron tayong RT-PCR, alin doon yung tama or alin doon yung required. It's in that particular episode of the Sprout webinar. And then of course in ating WARE or Work Accident Illness Reporting Form. Mandatory pa rin po ang compliance sa reporting requirements, and of course there's a separate provision for workplaces with imminent danger situations, meaning ito po yung ating mga hospitals or healthcare facilities who are interacting or have a high probability of interacting with COVID positive patients. Okay, so let's leave the DTI DOLE interim guidelines for now, and again I would like to request everyone who wish to have an in-depth discussion of this to visit the sprout.ph/COVID website for the dedicated episode talking about the DTI DOLE interim guidelines. Now, we are on the second raffle keyword. The second raffle keyword is compliance. Okay, so again, regarding DTI DOLE workplaces, there are particular government agencies with specific issuances. So if you're a bank, you may have some issuances from the Bangko Sentral or the Cooperative Development Agency for co-ops relative to the reopening of your business. The local government units, please pay particular attention to the local government units because the national guidelines cannot encompass the provisions of the local government unit. The province, the city, the municipality, the barangay even are allowed to promulgate ordinances uh, that will be pertaining to how the business would reopen. So make sure that you are also aware of which ordinances are applicable to you. And of course, let's also factor in the residences of the employees. Kung masyadong malayo yung residence and public transport is not available, then you may want to provide shuttle services for them. And just to cap that discussion on the DTI DOLE interim guidelines, please make sure to have a management-driven risk assessment so that you're able to determine your readiness to reopen and resume operations. Okay, let's go now to the DOLE advisory on the preservation of employment. So there are 5 features of this particular labor issuance, particularly an emphasis on work from home or telecommuting arrangements, alternative work schemes, adjustments to wages and wage-related benefits, the entitlements of separated employees, and of course, the DOLE reporting. So when we talk about this particular labor issuance, this is Labor Advisory 17 series of 2020. The DOLE actually still, again, I cannot emphasize this enough. The DOLE has been very much proactive in promulgating issuances relative to COVID. As early as January 31, nag-issue na po ng advisory ang DOLE, and we cannot acknowledge Secretary Bello and his team enough because at that time, it's not yet COVID-19. NCOV pa lang po yung tawag natin doon. But we have already issued issuances or advisories pertaining to COVID. So going back to the preservation of employment, the DOLE acknowledges that there is still the threat of COVID-19 out there in the street. And for this reason, all establishments are highly encouraged to adopt work from home or telecommuting. This is provided for in DOLE Department Order number 202, series of 2019, or the implementing rules pertaining to the Telecommuting Act. This was also emphasized in Labor Advisory 9-2020, which allows employers to implement work from home provisions. The objective po with work from home is twofold. Number one, it's to minimize the consumption of resources, meaning minimize ng travel, minimize ng konsumo ng kuryente, and then of course you are also ensuring that the workers are adequately protected because they are indoors. No, the important thing about this is that you have to have either a policy or some other guidelines for your employees to ensure that you are able to properly deliver the work from home arrangement. Okay, second is alternative work schemes. So in alternative work schemes, if your facility or your employer cannot implement alternative work schemes, there are other arrangements available. Particularly, for example, the transfer to other branches. For example, you're a retail establishment. You have a branch in SM Aura, SM Makati, and some other lugar like Mandaluyong. And then you have persons who are living in, meron kayong mga empleyado na doon nakatira sa Pasig, Mandaluyong, Taguig. Pero iba-ibang lugar sila na naka-assign. So pwede nyo silang i-rotate so that people who are residing in Taguig are reporting to the Taguig branch. People are residing in Makati are reporting to the Makati branch. And people who are residents of Mandaluyong are reporting to the Mandaluyong branch. Another option is the assignment to other function or position in the same or other branch, where it's not feasible to, for example, there's a duplication of the work in particular branches of your establishment. You can rotate personnel on a temporary basis and have them perform other functions. As provided for in Labor Advisory 9, you're also allowed to reduce work days or work hours and do job rotation just to ensure that personnel would have equal opportunity to earn during the time that you are on diminished operating capacity. Also, allowed din po ang partial closure of establishment. And a reminder from the DOLE here is that alternative work schemes or flexible work arrangements are temporary in nature and shall be adopted for as long as the public health crisis exists. Meaning until we have a declaration that the Philippines is finally COVID-free, then these alternative work schemes are available to employers. Okay, this one is important. Adjustments to wage and wage-related benefits. I wish to emphasize the importance here because this is actually an exception to the labor code itself. No, meron tayong non-diminution of benefits. In the non-diminution of benefits, the general rule is that employers cannot go down. You can only go parity or go up or provide higher wages or wage-related benefits. But due to the exceptional nature of COVID, we are now allowing voluntarily and in writing for the temporary adjustment of wages and wage-related benefits. What is important here is that the employees voluntarily and in writing consent to the temporary adjustment to wages, allowances, and other benefits. Please note that in this particular instance, adjustments are not allowed to be, or rather, adjustments shall not exceed 6 months or the period agreed upon in the CBA if there is any. And after that period, after that 6-month period, employees and employers shall review and may renew the same. No? So again, I wish to emphasize it has to be voluntary and in writing. So kung mag-a-adjust po kayo ng inyong wages, magkakaroon kayo ng pay cut, please ensure that it is voluntary and in writing. Okay? All right, let's go to the next slide. It's also inevitable that some employees will have to be separated, particularly for, we've seen it in the news, particularly the tourism sector, no? So there are instances that the employer would have to avail of the authorized causes of termination. And in such instance, what I wish to emphasize is that you have to comply with due process, meaning may 30-day notice both to DOLE and to the affected employee. And the entitlement to final pay would be pursuant to Labor Advisory 6-2020, which is the 30 days after the last day of employment. And naka-footnote na lang po ito dito, we also have to have compliance with the DOLE reporting requirements, meaning you have the RKS form or the establishment report form, which is your due process requirement whenever you have an authorized cause termination in your facility. Okay. So, what are the key takeaways for today? The first one is that safety and health of workers and stakeholders. It is important for employers and basically everyone in this day and age to ensure that our workers, our families, our stakeholders are safe and in good health. And we can do that by ensuring that we comply with the DTI DOLE interim guidelines on workplace prevention and control of COVID, and especially observing personal hygiene. And second, the objective of the government and of the law at this time is to preserve employment. Even if mas mababa ang ating kita, mas mababa ang ating take-home pay, the important thing is that we have jobs to hold on to, because we're looking at, this is the long game. Everyone should buckle in and ensure that everyone, kumbaga, let's bear the brunt of this particular crisis equally. And we can do so by ensuring that for us employees, we ensure cooperation with the lawful directives of our employer in compliance, of course, with the DOLE and DTI and other government issuances pertaining to how we should control and prevent the spread of COVID-19. And for employers, we hope that this particular episode is useful, and we encourage you to continue joining Sprout in this webinar series, because this is Sprout's way of being good citizens of the Philippines. And we hope that by us sharing our expertise and time, to the general public, we are able to promote and help the government in disseminating to the widest possible audience these particular legal guidelines. With that, I'm ending my presentation and bring it back to Kyle.
Hey, thank you po, Attorney Lester, for that very informative talk. I believe our audience members have a lot of insights regarding our topic today. So, so that you know more about who we are or what Sprout is, please watch this short video before we move on to the Q&A portion or fireside chat portion of the event. Right, so we'll be flashing the video in a short while.
Hey, Paolo. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, come in. Welcome to Sprout.
Tell us a little about Sprout.
We fix HR and payroll in the Philippines. We have a software platform. Companies use us to streamline time and attendance, HR, payroll, even recruitment these days.
Where did Sprout come from?
Well, I grew up on a farm, so plants are kind of in the background.
Okay.
Yeah.
So show us around, please.
Yeah, sure. So this is our sitting area first when we are entertaining guests. This is the P from our logo. My co-founder and I are quite hands-on, so we actually spent a lot of time kind of ideating and figuring out how the office should be. So yeah, that's how it got to where it is. This is Sprout's North Star. So this is kind of the fundamental vision of the company. We really want to impact the lives of every Filipino by improving business in the Philippines. So that's our mission and our vision and the whole package.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the video. You got a little peek of what it looks like in our office. And now we are going to announce the third raffle keyword. Third raffle keyword is advisory. So again, that is advisory. So just to recap, the three keywords are DOLE, compliance, and advisory. To repeat that, that's DOLE, compliance, and advisory. So I hope you join the raffle by following our Sprout Twitter page and comment these three keywords on the pinned post. Okay, so the next portion of the event is our fireside chat. So please prepare a question and just type them in the chat box. But first, I'd like to welcome back our speaker, Attorney Lester Ople. He's our first panelist. So, Attorney, welcome po ulit.
Thank you, Kyle. Again, thank you to our webinar attendees. And I hope everyone is safe and sound wherever you are.
Yes. And I also want to welcome our second panelists. Let's welcome Sir Ray Salvador. Sir Ray Salvador is a seasoned audit and risk management professional with 9 years of experience from various industries. So, Sir Ray, welcome po.
Thanks, Kyle, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So, okay, now that we have our panelists, ladies and gentlemen, we're now opening the floor for your questions. So please type them in the Zoom chat box. Okay, so panelists, we have our first question. I would repeat the question twice so that everyone would be clear about it. First question is, how do I make sure our business is complying with the government? Again, that is, how do I make sure our business is complying with the government?
I would like to take that question. In terms of general labor standards and other DOLE or labor law related compliances, please go to the DOLE website, look for two documents. No, in particularly the Statutory Monetary Benefits Handbook and the Occupational Safety and Health Standards Handbook. There's a very long list of compliance checklists available in those two documents, and it's best to go through it one by one, or it would actually be very helpful, at least for a general labor standards standpoint. Software and services like Sprout are helpful in ensuring that you're able to comply with holiday pay, overtime pay, and all of these other statutory monetary benefits handbook. As to occupational safety and health, aside from the OSHA guidelines, I've discussed earlier the DTI DOLE interim guidelines. So it's best if you work with qualified occupational safety and health professionals to do a Gemba walk or an inspection of your facility.
Okay,
And
thank you. Go ahead, sir. Sir.
And to add with that, for other government regulation, you can check also with other functions under your team. Like for example, if you have audit function, compliance, and of course legal, then you can work with them to ensure or to check if you are compliant, especially those key activities that are quite changing or frequently changing during this time, especially with, for example, BIR compliance, the deadlines have been extended. So let's make sure that we are compliant in terms of the filing and submission of our BIR requirements or returns. And also there are, for example, with our rent, the grace period is being considered as well as to the date where it should start. For example, if we are already allowed by the DTI to start operating as early as April or May, then per IATF, then the grace period would start from that date. So we need to review this regulation as well to make sure that we are compliant, and at the same time prepare our business for any potential obligation that could have impact on our cash flow or operating fund or even our strategy in the near future.
Okay, thank you, panelists, for answering that question. So let's proceed to the next question from our audience. The question is, may I ask if there is a health symptom questionnaire template that can be filled out digitally? So meron po bang health symptoms questionnaire template that can be filled out digitally?
I had the opportunity to test Sprout's new feature yesterday. No, when in Sprout, so you are aware that we are a software and service company. We offer timekeeping and payroll solutions and other HR services. So when an employee logs into Sprout, so I key in my username and password so that I can access my payslip, my importante yung payslip. I was accessing it yesterday, but before I was allowed to proceed to the panels in Sprout HR that I wanted to access, I was prompted with the pop-up, and the pop-up was a health symptoms questionnaire. It was asking me questions, and I tried to, simple lang yung questions. It's, do you have a fever today? Tapos may binigay na temperature. I think it's higher than 37.5. Did you have contact with a COVID positive patient? It was about 4 or 5 pop-up questions, and I can only proceed to the next question if I properly answer it. So yes, you can go digital. Sprout HR has that available, and Kyle, maybe you can share some more details regarding Sprout HR later. But digitally, it's nice for me to go through Sprout because I'm sure that at least from a data privacy perspective, adequately protected yung aking disclosures on the Sprout HR system. So you can avail of it through a Google form, but of course, if it's a Google form, saan po pumupunta yung backend nun?
Right.
And also just to add with what Attorney Lester shared, for us in Sprout, yun nga, within the system siya, within our HR hotspot namin. But of course, all of these questions were based on the DTI and DOLE interim guidelines. And at the same time, these questionnaires, I see here a question if while working from home, it is still required. These questionnaires are only required to be provided or to be submitted by the employees before they are allowed to access our building or office, just to ensure that there are no symptoms or yung likelihood na yung employee na papasok has COVID-19 or vulnerable. For example, not necessarily they have COVID, but they are more vulnerable in acquiring or mas madali silang mahawa. So initially, it was implemented in our building management na hard copies, but of course we raised the issue of it will be more prone for our employees if they will manually sign it every day sa lobby. At the same time, the queue or the bottleneck would expose more of our employees. So that's why we opt to have it on online or through our system. But of course, another workaround there is through using the G Forms or Google Forms. But as what Attorney Lester said, let's keep track of who has access in this drive. Kasi again, nakalagay doon that we need to protect the data privacy of our employees, especially that this information are highly sensitive then. So even though it is to comply with the Bayanihan Act, we are still obliged to comply with the Data Privacy Act as well.
Correct. Yeah. So thank you, panelists, for that. Ako rin actually yesterday when I accessed Sprout HR, lumabas din yung questionnaire. So that's very good of Sprout kasi we want to keep the privacy of these questionnaires, especially the results of this questionnaire. Sige po. So the next question, I think this is also related to the first question. Is there a questionnaire template provided by any government agency? If there is, what's the agency? And my follow-up, can we make the questionnaire in soft copy instead of hard copy or manual handwritten?
As shared earlier by Ray, ang pinakamaganda pong puntahan is the DTI DOLE interim guidelines. But personally, I also researched through it. And I personally like the one required by the House of Representatives. Because why did I cite the House of Representatives version? There's a data privacy compliance statement in their version. So, Ray, you may want to add something?
Sure. Part siya ng annex sa DTI and DOLE interim guidelines on workplace prevention and control of COVID-19. So if you can check that, you can easily search it in in the internet, Google for example, and nandun siya part siya ng yung template, part siya dun ng annex. And also included in doon, there's a portion as well in the questionnaire that by signing this form, the company guarantees that your information, something will be protected in accordance with the DPA. But at the same time, the company or the government requires you to provide the accurate information in compliance with the Bayanihan Act. So, and that's important as well, even though if it's either done manually or through online. So yung clause na yun dapat available pa rin.
Dagdag ko lang doon sa kanina, no? So if you will be using the House of Representatives form, make sure to remove the House of Representatives logo and references to it. Pero I like it kasi it's the same. It's the same as the DTI DOLE interim guidelines, but in the government agencies that I've seen, sa kanila yung pinaka-comprehensive yung privacy statement. Probably because our congressman would like to remain private.
Right. Okay. Thank you po for that very good answer. So I'll proceed to the next question. Under DOH Memo 2020-020, a person tested positive using rapid antibody test kits should undergo home quarantine for 14 days to take another test after the quarantine period. Now, the question is, can we compel that person to take RT-PCR during the quarantine period, even if the person does not have the symptoms? Or is the RT-PCR just an option?
Let me first disclaim that I myself am not a medical professional. So I cannot comment on the medical value or the epidemiological value of the question. But as far as guidelines are concerned, let us be reminded that the rapid test kit, at least the literature available on the government issuances, is not required. No, I want to emphasize that the DTI DOLE interim guidelines do not require employers to undergo rapid testing or to implement rapid testing for employees who are returning from work. I would like also to disclaim that a particular government agency may have an issuance to the contrary, because I am aware, I'm not sure if the DPWH has amended or modified that particular issuance, but the DPWH in a couple of weeks back requires rapid testing for government contractors and their employees who are resuming work on infrastructure. That may or may have been revoked. As something I should preface these discussions on is the issuances from the government are very fluid at this point. So make sure that you access the latest information. As of last night, our information here is accurate. I can vouch for that. So regarding the rapid testing versus the PCR testing, hindi po ako maka-comment doon, but I think that if you are aware that a person has already exhibiting symptoms or is tested positive, then the proper management there should be medical, not labor relations compliance yung management natin. Medical muna tayo. Remember, COVID-19 is a medical issue. It is not a legal issue. We cannot throw, people with uniforms onto the street and just battle it out with them on the street. COVID is an unseen enemy. It's a medical issue. And one thing that escapes a lot of regulators is that the COVID pandemic is a medical issue. Hence, the management should primarily be medical. So in your case, sir, please make sure that you coordinate with the healthcare provider, with the government hospital, or maybe the most likely would be the city health officer where the employee resides, because they would be the ones to identify if that is a confirmed COVID case or just somebody with a false positive or something.
Okay. Thank you po, Attorney. Sige, let's proceed po to the next question. If my employees has refused to submit to the health check for more than 3 times this week, and we refuse to allow him or her to enter our workplace, and that person is threatening to go to DOLE, how do we deal with it? So I'll repeat the question po. If an employee has refused to submit to the health check for more than 3 times this week, and they refuse to allow him or her to enter the workplace, and now she is threatening to go to DOLE, how do we deal with it?
First, let me commend the employer for simply refusing to allow access to the premises. As we have seen in the news reports, there are some instances that consequences were worse for people who are not cooperative. But as to the particular question, my recommendation here is to treat this developmentally. As an employer in this particular healthcare issue, public healthcare issue, your primary objective is to ensure that nobody is infected with COVID as you resume work in your facility. If somebody is not cooperative, then you're right in refusing entry. No? And my question here would be, are you adequately protected in the sense that you have explained to people the importance of the health questionnaire? Have you given them face masks or PPEs or any other things that are required under the DTI DOLE interim guidelines? If you are confident that you have complied with the letter of the law, then I don't think you should be concerned regarding non-compliance. What you should be concerned of now would be what would be the consequences of non-compliance. Hindi ba Hindi ba insubordination na tong case na to?
Right. Thank you.
And also just want to add that communication, information drive as well is very important kasi it's also part of the employee's obligation when it comes to the DTI and DOLE interim guidelines that they need to comply with this mandate as well, not only the employer but also the employee. So as part of employees' responsibilities, they need to comply with these security or even regulatory measures. Like for example, before accessing the site or the building, they need to answer these forms or these health checklists or health symptom questionnaires. And at the same time, they need to comply with the, for example, face masks, frequent hand washing. So one way then to ensure compliance is to conduct an information drive, awareness program as well for our employees, and of course the potential sanctions or if any in case of non-compliance.
Okay. Well, thank you, panelists, for answering that. Okay. Let's proceed po to the next question. Okay. Sige po. Now, how do you declare or file for reduction of work hours? What are the requirements? Yeah. How do you declare or file for reduction of work hours? Ano po daw yung requirements?
As mentioned by Ray earlier, communication is very important. In this public health emergency, the amount of uncertainty of individuals, families, and institutions are very high, and we address that uncertainty by communication. If we don't know something, then let's be forward. Sabihin natin sa employees natin, actually hindi pa namin alam. No? particularly yung ating suspension of operations. Kasi, for example, yesterday there was a report about Sun Cruises suspending or closing the Corregidor route, no? And that affects several employees already. So from ticketing to the actual ferry vessel, it's a whole ecosystem of it's an economic ecosystem that has shuttered down. No? So communication is, of course, very important. Second, when you talk about reduction of work hours or work days, the Department of Labor issued advisory number 9. Nakalagay po doon yung form. Please take note that the form requires the identification of the particular flexible work arrangement that you will be implementing, kung kayo ba ay reduced work hours, temporary closure, reduced work days, or job rotation. And then the names and other details of your employees. So name, position, salary, employment status, age, gender, lahat po yun required. So there's a form, it's called the COVID-19 Establishment Report Form. It's downloadable on the DOLE website, available in the same page as the advisory number 9. Regarding submission, no, so I'm not sure if the DOLE has opened physically their offices, but email submission is allowed to your regional office. So kung kayo po ay NCR, submit it to the NCR regional office. As to the other regions, yung pong regional office na email address ang pag-submitan natin.
You can also check our first webinar. I think this is also
Yes.
included LA 9-2020 Labor Advisory 9. So Attorney Lester explained it in our very first webinar last March, I think. So these are available.
Wow,
March.
that feels so long ago, no?
So available siya sa website namin, all of these materials as well as information, other reference materials.
Yeah, parang ang dami na po nangyari, no?
Oo nga. Ang dami nangyari, nasa bahay lang naman tayo lahat.
Oo nga eh. Sige po, I'll proceed to the next question. Is the RKS form or RTW form required to all companies operating now, and not just for companies who have separated employees? So to repeat that, is the RKS form or RTW form required to all companies operating now, and not just for companies who have separated employees?
Yeah. Let me cite the DTI memorandum. So before filing anything, make sure that your industry is allowed to resume. For example, our leisure establishments, no. So yung mga yung mga personal care establishments. So massage salons, ano pa ba? Yung mga salons and barbershops that offer non-basic services like yung mga pariband. Pwede na pong magpagupit ngayon pero hindi pa po pwede magpariband, no? That's my favorite line from that. So there's a DTI memorandum, DTI Memorandum Circular 20-33. Nakalagay po doon kung, let me check the number, no? Yeah, 20-33. It contains the categories of business establishments allowed to operate under the various community quarantine, kung ECQ, MECQ, GCQ, MGCQ. Nakalagay po doon kung ilang percent yun. So it's DTI Memorandum Circular 20-33. And then if you are resuming work, yes, please submit the necessary forms to the DOLE, again, to your regional office. Although I would like to emphasize that if you were on a work from home arrangement, baka naman hindi nyo pa kailangan mag-submit kasi continuous work from home pa rin naman kayo eh. So wala pang changes. So technically you're not resuming work. You've just continued your work from home setup.
Okay. Sige po. Next question po tayo. Are there any DOLE staffs checking business establishments and ensuring compliance of business companies? And what if DOLE found any business lacking in compliance? Are there penalties? And so yung question, I think it's very, from someone who's very concerned. Are there any DOLE staff checking business establishments in ensuring compliance? And what if they found out something in terms of lacking in compliance? Are there penalties?
Let me preface my answer with hindi po, let's endeavor to comply even if there is no audit. The objective of the government in issuing these issuances is to help employers, the industry, the public to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And yun po yung rason. It's not because somebody is checking and there are penalties for non-compliance. That's why we are having these webinars. No? As to the DOLE actually conducting audits, hindi ko po kayang sagutin. I cannot claim knowledge regarding the topic. Please ask your regional office, your regional director regarding that. No. But again, hindi po porke may nag-audit saka lang po tayo mag-comply. Let's comply because the objective of these government issuances is to ensure that everyone is safe even if we are already resuming economic activity.
Okay.
Sorry. Regarding penalties pala, no? I would like to emphasize that the Bayanihan to Heal as One law has penal provisions, no? And in particular, the notification of notifiable diseases, meron din pong batas yan na may penal provisions, no? So if you go to the social media pages, there's a whole discussion on the bawal lumabas and all. So yun na lang po. I'd like to inject some humor, but it might not be appropriate. So let's just refer to the Bayanihan to Heal as One law and the notification of notifiable diseases law because there are penal provisions in there. And your local government unit may also have ordinances pertaining to non-cooperation with the COVID-related issuances.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sige po, let's go to the next question. Medyo madami po eh.
Okay lang. Let's go through them kasi I know maraming interested dun sa topic natin, which is magre-resume na tayo eh. Konting-konti na lang. Balik na tayo sa opisina lahat.
Oo nga po eh. Sige po. Next question. PEZA requires 10% of the workforce to work on site. DOLE approves alternative work arrangements including shortened days or hours. For the 10% of our workforce reporting on site, can we have them report once a week and then the rest of the week work from home?
Let me first disclaim that I am not that familiar with the PEZA issuances. No? As we have communicated, ang objective po ni Sprout in having these webinars is to hit the broadest audience possible and share the relevant government issuances. You're a PEZA entity. You may have your legal counsel or external counsel advise you regarding compliance on PEZA matters. But as to the DOLE, no, hindi po ako makakasagot sa PEZA. No? So on the DOLE side, please note that the various permutations po, job rotation, work from home, flexible work arrangement, allowed naman po yun. No? And you also have to take note of the fact that DTI Memorandum Circular 20-33 identifies which industries are allowed at 50%, 100%. So yun po muna yung check-in nyo. So the permutations are allowed. Even the temporary closure is allowed. So 0, 5, 10 to 95%. Basta po nandun kayo sa allowed to operate na capacity ng DTI.
Yes, and to add, this category 1 to 3 are only allowed to operate up to certain percentage, meaning there's no bottom line as to ano yung kailangang required to report on site. So for example, category 2, they are allowed up 50 to 100%. So again, allowed but not necessarily required per ruling. And at the same time, DOLE also promotes na work from homes or alternative working arrangements to ensure that to minimize mga exposure ng employees natin and to minimize then yung growth lang or yung transmission ng COVID-19. Just to disclaimer lang din, I'm not a PEZA expert, so we'll check this one if it is really required, the 10% of workforce to work on site. So as far as we know with regards to the DOLE requirements, they are only allowed up to, but there's no minimum na kailangan work on site talaga. It can be a management prerogative or management plan or business strategy to make sure that our key operations are working at a certain level.
Okay. All right. It's sad to say that our time is up for the panel session. I was just informed that if you have any more questions, please email legal@sprout.ph.
Sorry, Kyle. I just want to answer a question regarding the remote
Sure, sure.
discussion on flexible work arrangement. Gusto ko lang mabilis sa sagot.
Go ahead.
Regarding email or digital confirmation of consent, um, as long as your processes or policies allow it. For example, if your email system can allow a return receipt to be collated and preserved as part of the employee's 201 file, digital consent is allowed for these particular policies. But I would recommend to you move up further and promulgate a policy on how electronic policies and electronic consent is documented by the company. So, for example, you are on a particular email system that allows red receipts to be stored. Mas maganda kung okay lang naman yung preservation ng consent through digital means as long as your policies and your systems can allow it.
Okay.
And then last one, contact tracing. Very important po yung health questionnaire because this is what facilitates contact tracing. And contact tracing is not done by the company. It's done by the local government unit's health officer. So if you're under a city, let's say Makati City or Taguig, you have your city health officer and you report accordingly because the contact tracing will be done by the LGU, not by the company. But the company is allowed to, of course, do its own reasonable due diligence.
Yes, and also just to add, there should be a reporting structure within the company. Then it is required under the interim guidelines that in case there's a positive case or suspected case within the building, you need to report it to appropriate government agency.
Ayan, mukhang wala na akong ano. Yung ibang questions po, medyo mahaba na. We will not be able to answer it. But we still have this, I turn it over back to you, Kyle.
Sige po. Well, thank you very much, panelists. Ganun po kabait yung mga attorneys namin and panelists for this Q&A. We are really very eager to answer all your questions. And if we have not answered your question today, please email us at legal@sprout.ph. If you have any more questions, email us also at that email. Again, thank you po, Attorney Lester and Sir Ray for your very informative inputs and for being our panelists today. Thank you po. All right, before we end the webinar, next slide please. I'd also like to announce that you can still get all the HR help you need. You get free 30 days access to our HR and payroll system, Instacash, and BCP expert advice. Manage timekeeping and attendance, process payroll, apply for Instacash, completely done by the click of your finger. So help your company bounce back stronger with the Sprout free 30 days. Sign up using the link flash in the screen, bit.ly/Sprout Rescue Kit June. All right, so I hope you were able to get that. For those who are interested to get the free 30 days access to our HR payroll, access the link flashed in the screen. So this is until June 30. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so now we're in the moment that we've all been waiting for. And I'd like to announce the raffle winners. Okay. Sige po, I'll check the names of the raffle winners. So, medyo mabilis po sila nag-comment on the Twitter post. First, we have CJ De Los Reyes. Yan. Congratulations, CJ De Los Reyes. Second winner is Mean Dison. Mean Dison, congratulations. And we have Seven Morales. Seven Morales, congratulations to you. And the last winner of our raffle, Michael Lance. Michael Lance. So again, that's CJ De Los Reyes, Mayan Dison, Seven Morales, and Michael Lance. So for the winners, please type your email address in the Zoom chat box so that we can send you the GC codes through email. And again, for the winners, type your email address in the Zoom chat box so we can send the GC codes through email. Now, thank you everyone for participating. Thank you for joining the raffle and congratulations to the winners. Next slide, please. Now, we can also send you e-certificates for attending this session. Now, here are the instructions on how to get them. So please email a request to info@sprout.ph and indicate your full name, your company name, and your position in that company. Again, email a request for the e-certificate at info at sprout.ph and indicate the following details in the request. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so that is to wrap our